Welcome to Klepper's Corner, today in history, where we crack open the dusty scrapbook of civilization, flip to June 26, and realize, oh wow, this day really said, let's make history happen. June 26 isn't just another spin around the sun. It's apparently the date where world leaders shake hands, mischievous bulldozers roll through your neighborhood, triumphant Supreme Court justices finally realize gay people are people, and someone, somewhere, always gets quoted yelling something "Deine Brüste" in German. That's right. On this one weirdly stacked day across decades, humanity has signed world-changing treaties, paved over cities for interstates, scanned gum with lasers, and legalized love. It's like the universe looked at June 26 and said, let's give historians carpal tunnel. So buckle up, because from United Nations dreams to UPC machines, from Cold War speeches to equality breaches, today we walk through the 7-layer historical dip that is June 26. Segment 1, the United Nations Charter signed, 1945. Ah yes, June 26, 1945. The world was still brushing off the ashes of World War II, and the Allied nations decided it was high time to try this whole peace thing again. Because, you know, it went so well with the League of Nations. Spoiler, it didn't. In San Francisco, 50 nations gathered to sign the United Nations Charter, an agreement designed to save humanity from the recurring hobby of global war. A noble goal, like trying to teach a cat to take a shower. This moment of global kumbaya was filled with optimism, unity, and just a smidge of Cold War foreshadowing. While Eleanor Roosevelt was envisioning a kingdom of God on earth, Stalin was negotiating for the right to say "niet" to everything in the Security Council. Because what says teamwork like a built-in veto? Sure, the UN Charter emphasized human rights, peace, and equality, but let's be honest. It was also about making sure the 5 biggest kids on the playground never had to take a timeout. Hence, the permanent members of the Security Council got veto power, which has since been used to block everything from peacekeeping efforts to resolutions about who brings snacks to the meeting. Still, despite all the compromise and contradiction, the UN managed to outlive its older cousin, the League of Nations, which folded faster than a cheap lawn chair at a barbecue. And hey, credit where it's due. The UN hasn't prevented every war, but we haven't had a World War III. Yet. Segment 2, the Federal Aid Highway Act approved, 1956. On June 26, 1956, Congress passed the Federal Aid Highway Act, America's bold new plan to pave over everything. President Eisenhower, inspired by Germany's Autobahn and a cross-country military convoy that made him hate potholes more than communism, wanted a system of roads so efficient you could flee a nuclear attack and make it to a Howard Johnson's before dinner. The act funded 41,000 miles of shiny new interstates, turning the American dream into the American commute. Yes, it created jobs and connected the country, but it also bulldozed through entire neighborhoods, usually the poor and minority ones. Nothing says progress like flattening someone's grandma's house for an off-ramp. Now let's talk about those freeway revolts. Over 50 cities protested the construction, but the roads came anyway, rolling over objections like they were made of asphalt. By the time the dust settled, 1 million people had been displaced. But hey, at least you can drive from Tulsa to Tampa in under 24 hours. That's worth a few obliterated communities, right? Today, our interstate system is a marvel of civil engineering and soul-sucking traffic. It gave us suburbia, strip malls, and the knowledge that all Waffle Houses look exactly the same. Segment 3, the St Lawrence Seaway opens, 1959. June 26, 1959, the U.S. and Canada opened the St Lawrence Seaway, a 2,500-mile wet dream for cargo ships. It turned the Great Lakes into an international shipping juggernaut, allowing iron ore, wheat, and regret to travel from the Atlantic to Duluth, Minnesota. Finally, Duluth was on the map, and also underwater depending on the season. It was a marvel of engineering, a triumph of cooperation, and a logistical nightmare for indigenous communities who were forced to pack up and get out of the way. As usual, big infrastructure made the economy hum and local traditions vanish. But Eisenhower loved it. He called it a magnificent symbol of peaceful cooperation. Of course, he didn't have to relocate his entire town to make room for iron ore barges. Funny how that works. Today, the Seaway generates billions and employs hundreds of thousands, proving once again that progress is best measured in jobs created and communities displaced. Segment 4, JFK's Ich bin ein Berliner speech, 1963. In 1963, JFK rolled into West Berlin and dropped one of the most iconic lines in Cold War history, Ich bin ein Berliner, which, depending on your German, either means I am a Berliner or I am a jelly donut. Either way, the crowd ate it up. West Berliners were ecstatic. 450,000 people turned out, cheering like JFK just dropped a surprise album. But over in the East, Soviet Premier Khrushchev was not amused. He reportedly thought Kennedy was channeling two different personalities, the speech version and the actual policy version. Probably because 16 days earlier, Kennedy had delivered a much friendlier, let's all just get along speech. The emotional whiplash was real. But make no mistake, this speech mattered. It wasn't just an American president throwing shade at communism. It was a promise that the West would stand with Berlin, even if the wall behind him said otherwise. Segment 5, first UPC barcode scanned, 1974. June 26, 1974. A cashier in Troy, Ohio, scanned a pack of juicy fruit gum and history was made. The barcode was born. This little rectangle of black lines sparked fears, conspiracy theories, and eventually corporate efficiency. People thought the barcode was the mark of the beast, or at least a way to make groceries more expensive without price tags. They weren't totally wrong on that second one. But the UPC code changed everything. It made checkout faster, inventory smarter, and gave birth to the phrase, clean up in aisle 3, we scanned a potato as a DVD. Today, barcodes are everywhere. Grocery stores, libraries, airports, your medical bracelet, your cats, and probably your kid's forehead if you live in Silicon Valley. Segment 6, Lawrence v. Texas, 2003. Fast forward to 2003, and the Supreme Court finally realized that what consenting adults do in their bedrooms is none of the government's business. Lawrence v. Texas struck down anti-sodomy laws and reversed a previous decision that basically said being gay could be criminal. Conservatives clutched their pearls. Justice Scalia went full Shakespeare in his dissent, warning this would lead to the end of morals legislation, civilization, and probably daytime television. But this really laid the foundation for future LGBTQ+ rights. It wasn't just a win for privacy, it was a declaration that being who you are isn't a crime. Revolutionary stuff for a country that once fined people for kissing on Sundays. Segment 7, Oberfell versus Hodges, 2015. And then, a dozen years later on the same exact day, June 26 became Pride Christmas. In 2015, the Supreme Court ruled in Oberfell versus Hodges that same-sex marriage was a constitutional right. The decision was 5-4 because apparently 4 justices still thought love needed a user manual. But the majority said, nah, love wins. And it did. The reaction? Nationwide joy, rainbow-lit monuments, and one deeply confused county clerk in Kentucky who became a conservative folk hero by refusing to do her job. But despite a few grumbles, the country moved on, and couples finally got to tie the knot with legal benefits and matching pajama sets. And there you have it, June 26, a date filled with peace treaties, bulldozers, seaways, jelly donuts, barcode beeps, and the constitutional right to marry your soulmate. It's a day that reminds us history doesn't just repeat itself. Sometimes it shows up with a megaphone, a construction crew, and a pride flag.